South Africa just celebrated National Women's Day. But what is the state of gender equality in the country? And is the government's approach biblical? What does the Bible teach about the roles of men and women? And how should Christians think about these issues? All this and more on today's edition of TARIF. Today is Tuesday, August 13th, AD 2024. This is the Africa Review in 5. Written by Richard Peskett and presented by Yamikani Katunga. A word of wisdom on the worth of women. Last week, South Africa celebrated National Women's Day. It's a public holiday which commemorates a group of women who took a stand against oppression. On the 9th of August 1956, the women marched to the Union buildings in Pretoria to protest the government's unjust pass laws. National Women's Day is thus a reminder of the important contributions women make to society, as well as a time to ponder the advances in women's rights. Women's Day also highlights the mistreatment of women in South Africa at the hands of men. God has made men to protect women, not abuse them. Furthermore, God has given marriage as the hallowed place for physical intimacy between a husband and wife. It is therefore wickedness when men sleep around with women, sometimes forcibly, selfishly fulfilling the passions of their sinful flesh and leaving women to live with the consequences of their immorality. It's right to act against such abuse of women. However, National Women's Day also has another goal: gender equality. President Ramaphosa spoke last week, commending women for their courage and dignity, speaking of women as the pillars of our communities, the anchor of the family, and the backbone of the country. He went on to express the commitment of the government to gender equality in all domains of society, including the economic empowerment of women. He commented on the government's success when he said, "Women today are significantly represented in parliament, in government, and in the judiciary." This agenda has enjoyed much success within SA. For example, in my province, Mpumalanga, 23 of the 51 members of the legislature are women. The members are led by the Speaker, who is a woman. The same trend towards more women in leadership roles is seen throughout Africa and throughout the world. In the UK, following the recent elections, 3 of the top 4 posts in government are filled by women: the Deputy PM, the Chancellor, and the Home Secretary. This all seems fine and good according to man's agendas, but consider this: when the Israelites turned their backs on Yahweh, their God who had rescued them and led them and provided for them and loved them, what was one example of their sin and Yahweh's judgment on them? It was the fact that women ruled over the country. Isaiah 3 verse 12. But there's more. As well as promoting the leadership of women in society, women are actively encouraged to pursue paid employment outside the home in the cause of gender equality. Again, President Ramaphosa described the success of the government's policy when he said, "Thanks to our affirmative action policies, there are today more women in important positions in the workforce. Female learners achieve more bachelor's passes. Young women make up the majority of students in higher education institutions. We have prioritized women and youth in our public employment programs." Take a moment to consider this. As women go out to work, who instructs and disciplines the children? Sadly, many women earn a living outside the home so that they can pay for their children's education at the hands of someone they barely know. On the face of it, gender equality may seem good. After all, don't women have the same rights as men? Yes, but not the same roles. Affirmative action policies are ungodly and kind. Such policies encourage women to take roles that God has not given them, nor designed them for. The government is trying to stop the abuse of women by men, but their solutions are half-baked and contrary to God's design. This isn't a rant against women. God made both men and women in His image and likeness, as it says in Genesis 1 verse 27. So God created man in his own image. In the image of God, he created him. Male and female, he created them. Women are to be respected and treasured and praised by their husbands, but God has given men and women different roles for his glory and for our joy. Contrary to the president's opinion, it's not women alone, but families that are the backbone of any society, and in particular, families that function God's way. God has designed families to be the place where dad and mom, together, bring up the children, with the dad as the head of the home, leading the way. God has made men to lead, not women. And men are to do this by following the example of Christ, being both courageous and humble, leading and serving. God has graciously spoken to us through the scriptures and instructed his people on how we should live to please him and prosper. The government's agenda seems well-intended, but it's harmful. What should they do instead, some may ask? Well, for starters, they could stop providing free condoms and giving abortions on demand, both of which promote the abuse of women by lustful men. They could enforce the laws that prohibit violence. This is their God-given role, as found in 1 Peter 2 verse 13. They could even bring back the death penalty for murder, as instructed in Genesis 9:6 and Romans 13 verse 4. But ultimately, no amount of legislation or punishment will change the hearts of people. What then can be done? In his speech, President Ramaphosa rightly said, men must change their behavior. Men must change their attitudes. Yes, but all men and all women are by nature slaves to sin. Can a leopard change his spots? No. What then can be done to stop the abuse of women without promoting ungodliness? The solution is preaching the gospel of Christ. Hope comes through Christ. Change comes through the new birth when Yahweh powerfully changes a person from the inside out. Pastors need to model biblical manhood, preach on biblical manhood, and do their best to reach other men with the gospel of Jesus Christ. Believing men need to grow up, stop behaving like children, and lead their homes in such a way that their Christ-like leadership commends the gospel. And that's it for the Africa Review in 5 on this Tuesday, August 13th, in the year of our Lord 2024. Comment with your thoughts on the biblical perspective of the role of women in the family and society. And don't forget to subscribe to the Missionary Minds podcast on YouTube, Spotify, or Apple Podcasts. I'm Memikani Katunga. Be not weary in well-doing.